Congressman, welcome back. I know you guys are on break, so I don't know how much can go on. Yeah, I know. You and I talked offline, folks. Tim agrees they shouldn't be on break, but he doesn't make that call. The speaker does. I've got my own choice words for Kevin, because Kevin could have kept you guys there working. Can the committee, and is the committee working even though the full Congress is on break? Because it sounds like Comer is still putting stuff out there, and you guys are gearing up for when you get back to work next month.
Yeah, we're in almost constant conversation with Chairman Comer. He's pretty good about it. He's pretty persistent with it. And we get the emails and the updates. And then, and then we watch the mainstream media, of course, ignore everything about it. One thing I wanted to say in your monologue, which was 100% accurate, one interesting point that I always make is we don't have any proof that they paid any taxes on this $20+ million. And you and I think it's $600 if we sell on eBay, we automatically get a letter from the IRS. And those whistleblowers, we understand were actually, the heat was turned up by Hunter Biden's own attorneys on our IRS whistleblowers to actually, to impugn their reputation and treat them badly. So if you can imagine, this White House's reach goes all the way around to Hunter's attorneys, then it goes back to the IRS. And that is the complete weaponization of a department.
Wow. Well, we've seen it, in every agency. And this started, I'll tell you, JoJo's regime learned this from his boss man. This all happened under Barack Obama. I remember the big scandal when the mainstream media did actually cover it a little bit, when he weaponized the IRS to go after conservative nonprofit groups. Remember that? Yeah.
100%.
So, yeah. This is just the icing on the cake. Barack started it, showed Joe the door how to do it. Joe stepped through it, and now every single alphabet agency, name me one out there yet that hasn't been corrupted by this man since he's been in office. From the EPA to the DOJ to the FBI to the ATF, which I'm getting to later in this program. Come on. They're not following the Constitution. They're following, not the rule of law, they're following Joe Biden's lead, or the deep state, the military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it. These agencies are taking their marching orders, or it's the bureaucrats that run them, Tim, that are just making their own damn calls, right?
Absolutely. The military-industrial complex, or I like to call it the war pimps, haven't passed they've been audited. They lose billions of dollars. At one point, the Department of Defense had 60% of their assets unaccounted for. If you and I had that, I tell you, it wouldn't be our assets we'd be worried about. It'd be a shorter version of that, in jail, in handcuffs. It's pathetic, really. And I here's my prediction. I predict they're going to throw Biden under the bus, and they're going to use his mental capacity to keep him from doing any jail time. Hunter will do whatever. Hunter will go off to some strip club somewhere and get thrown out. If you can imagine that, thrown out of a sex club for debauchery, apparently, according to the owner. This family, man, it's too much. The Democrats are running for cover, and they will be looking for a new candidate.
But he's just a sweet old man, and they just love this country, and they're amazing, him and Dr. Jill. And Hunter's had a rough go, and oh, poor Joe. That's what you get in the media and the mainstream. I'm so sick of them covering. It's literally they're providing cover for this man's entire family, and like you said, the debauchery. All right, we got to pivot now from the investigation of our corrupt POTUS. But it ties in with a corrupt POTUS, obviously. And let's talk Ukraine, because we had some big news today and this week. Two major things I want to touch on. We'll start with the biggest one. The Wagner boss, this Prigozhin guy, the guy that's a gun for hire with his own private army, that got into it with Putin a while back. We don't know if that was a staged coup or not, but it was kind of a half-assed coup, right? He rolled into town, but then he turned around and left, and him and Putin said they kissed and made up. Well, evidently, he jumped in a business jet today, left Moscow, and it crashed and killed 10 people, and allegedly, he was on board. Now, again, they've said the manifesto said he was on board. No one's come forward and said, we saw him get on board. What are you hearing? Because I know you're on Foreign Affairs Committee as well. What are you hearing about this whole plane crash and him being dead or not? Because I don't believe anything coming from Russia or Ukraine.
I don't believe anything coming out of our mainstream media. Yeah. But, I saw a video, oddly enough, on the Christian Broadcasting Network, and it saw the plane basically just spiraling as it was falling. And to me, that had an indication of being shot. A missile blew its tail section off. I could be wrong, but, it's Russia. Putin's KGB, former KGB. I mean, there are a bunch of thugs over there. And then here we are trying to get us into a war over there. To me, it's just out of control. 114 billion plus 25 billion unchecked dollars to one of the most corrupt nations. It just doesn't fit. The whole thing stinks.
And the last one, because I'm out of time, Tim, is it was just announced in the last few days, or maybe it was late last week, that Biden again went back on his word once again, and we will now be sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. First it was, we won't send the Stingers, we did. We won't send tanks, we did. We won't send jets, we are. What the
Well,
heck?
every time we do this, look at who owns stock in those companies, because we have to replenish our supplies, just like the missile supplies. And you got people in both parties, both dadgum parties. You know, my stockbroker manages my $6,000 portfolio, which I switched over even into a mutual fund just to avoid any conflict. But let's look at who owns stock in that, because we'll have to replenish our supplies. We're not doing without as much as they'd like to leave us without. But you just watch the money, follow the money. The war pimps are at work, and they are.
Yeah, and I don't know, but if Lockheed Martin makes F-16s, folks, look and see which House and Senate members on both sides of the aisle take huge donations from Lockheed Martin. Then you know who's pushing to send jets. There you go. Rep. Tim Burchett, as always, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother. It's always a pleasure.